Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for hopping on. We'll give everybody a few minutes here, then we'll get rolling. While we wait, though, we're gonna chit chat about something totally non-related, like we usually do. Today, it's hot here, summertime. I think we're at a very balmy 85 degrees. Humidity's through the roof, so it got me thinking about ice cream. You're to make your own sundae bar. Which toppings do you choose? What's your perfect sundae?
I'll be honest, right before we started this meeting, we were talking about salads. Now all I can think about salads. I'm having a hard time.
Take the record off, switch sides.
Like it would be lettuce. So I would say I like two different things in general. Like I'm a big fan of cookies and cream, right? Like just plain and simple. Like, but then I'm also a huge fan of anything chocolate peanut butter, right? So it would go one of those two ways, right? It would be something simple like cookies and cream with a little bit of like syrup, chocolate syrup or something like that, right? Or it'd be like a chocolate, or like maybe like a vanilla peanut butter, something like ice cream with chocolate on that or something like that. Maybe some chocolate and peanut butter mixture. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I like the so I like the peanut butter that hasn't been smashed yet. So I do like to throw the nuts on there, and usually something like a butterscotch. I like the butterscotch. I'm kind of a if I've got the option, because you can kind of get a hot fudge sundae anywhere, right? You can run by McDonald's or wherever and pick that up, but you can't always get the butterscotch. It'd be real simple.
I kind of like the s'mores sundaes. It's like vanilla ice cream or even a chocolate ice cream scoop of each. I'd probably do that, and then put some of that marshmallow cream on top of there, some hot fudge and some crumbled up graham crackers. I'm definitely going to top it with a little bit of whipped cream and probably put a cherry on there too.
Going fancy on us, man. Fancy.
Going hard. Yeah.
Well, that's another good question too. When you get the sundae, do you opt in or out for the whipped cream and the cherry? I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this.
I'm a no-go on them.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of whipped cream in general. I'm a no-go when I go to a coffee place or ice cream. I like my cake with no frosting, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same on all those fronts too. I like the cherry just because I like that little extra bit of fruit there, but usually you're doing both, and I'll forego both just to keep the whipped cream on.
I barely at this point consider one of them maraschino cherries a fruit.
True,
right?
true.
You can't knock off one of your food groups there, Pink. All right.
just try to hack the food system a little bit.
I like to be healthy. I put a cherry on there.
That's right.
All right, cool. Well, let's get rolling. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hackle Box. I'm your host, Oscar Minks. As always, we got Eric and Pinky along for the ride today. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Having a good day.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
it's finally Friday.
I want to apologize to everyone who has attended the last however many we've done. I shaved my beard off. Now you have to look at this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But we see the start of something there. I don't know what's that all about.
I just was eating some ice cream like we were talking about right before this. Got a little cookies and cream on the lip. Fine. The team, we're talking about having mustaches for DEF CON. And despite what everybody might think from the glorious beards I've had in the past, my facial hair does not grow fast. Okay, so I have to get started now. That's all we're saying. So.
Yeah, I'm excited. We got a lot of unique stuff coming up for DEF CON. Everybody seems to be excited. We got mustaches. There's going to be some mullets too. I've seen some, I don't know if we call it costumes, some clothing. It seems like it's going to be busted out. It's going to be exciting.
I did get my American flag jean vest. So that's
nice.
Cool. Yeah. Denim vest. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I've heard wearing it right now.
As long as it's not a romper, cool with that.
They're called romp hymns, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And don't judge.
And I did buy one, so careful.
All right, cool. So we're going to dig into the news. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about this week, as usual. We'll try to get through it all. If we don't, we'll send out some notes and get that in your hands so you can review that afterwards. Let's dig right in. So I'm sure you guys heard Amazon Sidewalk, a new feature unveiled by Amazon, I think June 8th, a couple days ago this week. Essentially is automatically enabled if you have capable devices, right? It's going to be on by default. And so a lot of people are talking about this. A lot of people, I think, were surprised by this. I know personally, it felt like I heard a week ago this was coming, then the next week it was here. So there wasn't a lot of time even for people to kind of prepare to understand what the feature was, how it may affect them, what they should do, and so on. So I don't know, what do you guys think about it?
I mean, as someone who owns, Echo devices and stuff, I mean, it immediately was one of those things that caught me off guard. We were talking about it the other day, and I was like, luckily, I don't update my stuff very often as far as, buying new things, right? I update the firmwares and stuff, but I don't buy new things. Mine are dated from 2017, so they do not support this feature. So I don't have anything to do. But, I mean, realistically, that aside, I don't like anything that comes in and is sharing something that you're paying for, that you're doing, right? That is automatically opted in. If they want to unveil this, or they want to, bring this out, and they want to try to introduce new technologies to do some cool stuff, maybe. I mean, I don't know, arguably whether or not it's a cool thing or not, right? But despite what side you're on, it should be a thing that you have to opt into, you choose to do, right?
Yep.
That's kind of my opinion on it. I don't know, the messaging from Amazon to me was interesting. If you read their site about it, that's talking about like this new feature in two different places. I noted that they talk about how it's at no charge to you. We're not charging any fee for you to join Sidewalk. It's like, what? I don't think you're allowed to. I think it'd be illegal for you to charge access to my internet. I don't know. Like, how nice of you,
Yeah. And that kind of goes along with the note I had on it too, which was just like, I wrote, assuming consent is wrong. It's just wrong. Don't assume my consent. But also, like, feel free to sell me on it. Give me all the cool details. But I mean, it's like they're trying to sell you on not charging you for it. It's just, I'm not a fan. And the other note I made about it was, I mean, if you are using these things, if you have the ability, just segment them off, right, on your even on your home networks. But I'm kind of in the same boat. I've laughed. I was like, I don't really think the cows here are going to need the internet access, so I'm not too worried about it on this front. But
sure.
Yeah, I guess I see the benefit to, like if you, are in an area where you're trying to get cameras to a place where maybe your Wi-Fi typically won't reach, and you're able to put devices in that chain so you can bridge and extend your connectivity, right? So that's kind of cool. The thing that's kind of surprising to me is that you can't opt out of, or you can't secure that network to only allow your devices, right? So you're either in or you're out for Sidewalk. And so if you want to extend your network and get those long range cameras on your system, that's cool. But that also means your neighbors, whoever walks down the street, is going to be able to hop in and out of your network. The big thing that scares me about it is a new Wi-Fi protocol. No known beta testing from what I've been able to read and understand so far. And so there's a history with new Wi-Fi protocols. I think we're all aware of that. And typically there's going to be vulnerabilities discovered.
Right. Yeah, they released a white paper. I read through it briefly and, looked at it. And as far as like the things that they say they're doing, it's like, okay, cool. I mean, as far as a paragraph on a piece of paper, it sounds good, but it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. You absolutely know researchers going to be all over it. I'm sure they are, and I'll probably play with. Unfortunately, like I said, mine are out of date. It's 2018 and newer, I believe, devices for the most part. I might buy one or two just to mess around with them and test them. Probably buy two and see what I can do with them. Who knows if anything will come out of that. Yeah, they had some caps too on it. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's like 80 kilobit per second caps on how much will get used at any given time, which generally for most people these days with the internet the way it is, it should be a small amount. So as far as worries about stuff like that, it shouldn't be a big deal. It's like a 500 megabyte per month cap, but so at least those kinds of things, those kinds of concerns are not like a concern. I'm not going to sit there and be like, what's the quality of service for this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, like how much am I giving up to this versus my Netflix streams that are so important, But no, I mean, realistically, at least that's that. But I don't think you should ever opt people in by default. At the end of the day, that's how I feel about it. If you want to introduce new technologies and stuff like that, like I get it. I get like this move toward a future where things are interconnected and it allows for kind of a prevalence of things being able to do what they need to do, right? But it doesn't mean it's something I want. I understand the push, but don't opt me into it,
Yep. Yeah, I've seen one thing that was kind of interesting, people were talking about like, well, can help you find your neighbor's lost dog, right? So you get a tile on a dog, and if your dog's running through the network, it's easily going to be able to track where that dog was last checked in, right? The flip side of that, and this is, a perspective I hadn't really thought about, it also makes, abuse of those tiles a little bit easier too. So if you have someone who's trying to stalk someone, right, they slip that tile in someone's purse or slip a tile in someone's car and they're unaware that it's there, it's going to be easier to track individuals as well. That's kind of scary. And so,
Yeah.
I think that's with every new technology, there's going to be a new risk and a new possible avenue to abuse.
Yep.
Cool. So for everybody out there, just be aware that if you have capable devices, it is now enabled. If you don't want to be part of that, I recommend you go opt out of that. There's lots of instructions on how to do it online. And like Pinky said as well, if you are opting in, we would still recommend segment that network, put it on something that's not attached to where you're working from. If you are presumably working at home, or even just, if you have data you want to protect in your home, split that on different networks.
Yeah, regardless of if you're opt-in or out.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So moving on, going to cover a new remote code execution flaw in vCenter. So this came out recently. It's rated at a 9.8 out of 10. Essentially, from what I understand, right, it exists in the vCenter server vSphere client. You can execute code remotely due to a lack of input validation in the virtual SAN health check plugin, which from my understanding, that virtual SAN health check plugin is enabled by default. Not sure if you guys got to dig into this one or not. What do you think about it?
Just did a little bit of look at it. I did want to clarify. I think you said vCenter or vSphere client. I think it's actually on the vCenter server. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind too. I mean, like a lot of these, like that, to me, they should never really be exposed to the internet. You shouldn't have that out there anyway. But I mean, yeah, it was across 443. Even if you have it out there, you're probably not blocking that.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's VMware, man. If you can get in there, it looked like they had a possibility of like some web shells and that kind of thing. But once you're there, you may be able to create an account and come back in a little more legitimately or something, so you're less easily detected. It's you're looking at console level access, likely, at least as part of the chain there. And I think we'd all agree, right? If I'm physically at the box or have console level access, I'm basically root. So
yeah,
well,
the thing I was reading actually says that when you get to RCE, it executes it with unrestricted privileges. So.
Yep. Yeah. So just to clarify too for everybody, it is vCenter server. It's 6.5, 6.7, and 7.0 are the affected versions on there. What surprised me is how many people have these vCenter servers publicly accessible. At the time of that release, there was 5,600 on the internet. And I don't see any reason why you should ever expose your vCenter server to the internet. And I think continuing that thought logic as well, even internally, like why are we exposing management interfaces internally? You can have separate networks set up that house those management interfaces that you can segment to keep your typical users off of. So, reducing, mitigating that risk to your organization and giving you more time to patch when things like this happen. So it still goes back to, let's try to deploy things properly.
And that's an important consideration too. If you're, someone out there who's using, vCenter server internally, it's not exposed to the external environment. I mean, still consider what that looks like for internal compromise and lateral movement in your network. Should an attacker be inside of it, right? Make sure you're still locking that down to appropriate sources for whatnot. Because I mean, look, there's 5,600 people or whatever servers out there that are open on Shodan. I think it was 1,400 of them in the US or something. It's not a huge amount compared to some of the other stuff we've seen out there, but there is a huge amount of people using it internally, right? So
Yep. And to surprise, like it's already being exploited. Proof of concept has been publicly released at this time. There has been observations of people who are essentially scanning environments, scanning those known servers that have the ports open, seeing if they are exploitable. So if you're listening and you have that port open to the internet, get rid of it. You shouldn't be doing that, first of all. And even after you get rid of that, make sure you apply that patch.
Yeah, one of the proof of concepts I saw on GitHub had a Nmap script as well for scanning for it to see if you have it.
Oh, wow.
Vulnerability. So, I mean, it can be useful for scanning in your own environment, but it's definitely going to be useful for me and my team as attackers too. So,
Sure. Yeah, I did want to talk about too. Another interesting story that popped up over the last month is that FreakOut Malware, which is a really interesting piece of malware. I think it was first discovered back in January, is now targeting vulnerable VMware servers. At the time of this writing, it wasn't specifically targeting the new CVE, the 2021-21985, which is the one we just spoke about. But if you guys recall, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, we talked about another VMware RCE. That one's 2021-21972 was in February, is when that one was released. And so FreakOut kind of hit the news again because now they've embedded functionality to actually target those vulnerable vCenter servers, along with a whole host of other stuff. Did you guys get a chance to dig in to FreakOut at all?
Yeah, I did. I mean, yeah, they added it. VMware vSphere is a nice tie-in from our last conversation we were just having, but realistically, it is they've got a lot of functionality, like I know they added an SEO open server, which I've used a decent amount in the past for other things, a bunch of SMB exploits, and things like that. I was reading it even just brute forces over SSH or uses known combos, like known good combos and stuff. That's an interesting, kind of package, and to constantly be updating with all the new kind of 0 days or 1 days that come out, you know what I mean? So
Yep. Yeah, I think in the beginning, from what I understand about FreakOut too, they were primarily targeting vulnerable Linux hosts, right? So they were looking for like Zen Framework, Liferay, Terramaster, and from my understanding, they were, designing this program, it was like, let's look at these applications that have the biggest footprint externally, worldwide, that are probably most likely to be behind in updates. And so they were just thinking, what's our quickest point to profit, essentially? How can we just spray and pray and grab more vulnerable hosts and be able to exploit those? It seems like since then, they've made a lot of significant changes to make it a little more targeted basis, on these new 0 days and other vulnerabilities that are being released. The two things I do think are especially interesting is it does have a polymorphic engine, which we know makes identification through standard hash-based detections really challenging. And it also embeds a user mode rootkit, but then it does have a CNC that's operated through IRC, which is interesting. And there's actually, we're going to talk about another one today that actually has a CNC operating through IRC as well. Eric, do you got any experience with those IRC CNCs?
I haven't messed around with them much. I mean, at the end of the day, you can do C2 or CNC with, anything that you can post data to and read data from, right? That's why we've seen, proof of concepts for people doing it through comments on Instagram photos to, Twitter posts and GitHub updates and stuff like that, which feeds into some future topics we'll talk about here. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, you can post something to IRC and read from it easy enough.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, like with seeing these two kind of, in the same mod tier, they're specifically using those IRCs. I wonder if there's a reason driving that shift toward the IRCs. Is it that it is a little bit easier to communicate with multi-nodes if you have multiple organizations that are compromised using that IRC platform? Does it give kind of a, easier form to manipulate many targets at once versus just having like standard team server that may be tied to an organizational level with, a little more challenging to jump between those organizations to control your CNCs?
Yeah, I think that it could be a lot of things, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you're designing something new, especially if you want to design something fast and adapt fast, using anything within underlying infrastructure that can work is good. As far as like quickly being able to do things, stand things up and work with things, right? Not having to reinvent wheels, obviously. So it could be something along with that, just kind of a general like lack of desire to reinvent the server to handle this stuff, or it could be laziness, or it could be the fact that, it allows, well, and it has those properties, and it also allows a lot of people to connect to it and work together and do things, right?
Right.
I mean, it depends on kind of what they're looking to do with it, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so another
thing, it's kind of neat to see the IRC popping up like that for exactly that reason. And I know we're going to talk about it on the next one a little bit too, but kind of that ease of setup I thought was a good point as well there. So in the next one we talk about, the guy sort of mentions that he connected to it and then they burned it within 2 hours. And I'm sure they set up a new one really quickly. I mean, if you've ever built an IRC server, it's super fast to just stand one up and start going. So that may be part of it as well.
Yeah,
But
and maybe easier to have multiple contributors on the back end too. You know, people who are kind of adminning these attacks may make that a little bit easier. On the flip side, though, I think the detection, it does kind of make the detection a little bit easier, right? I don't know of a lot of businesses that should have valid IRC traffic passing through their network. So if you're looking for indicators here, look for that IRC traffic. If you see that, it's probably going to be evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Another aspect too, maybe to think about, I guess, from the why on it would be just that it's easy to stand up multiple nodes that all contribute to the same thing. So if one gets burned, the other ones can still work, you know, things like that.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. So just kind of run through to like the new additions really quick before we move on to the next one. So FreakOut now includes exploits for Vesta CP, Zero Shell, STO Open Server, Genexus Platform, OTRS, vCenter. There is a PHP remote code exploit as well for an unknown app that's included in there. So not sure what that one is. And it looks like for Python versions of Eternal Blue as well as Eternal Romance. What are they doing? It seems like it's kind of a mixed bag too with this exploit. They have been observed using tools for crypto mining, for the recon. They're essentially creating a giant botnet, right, and are executing DDoS attacks with it. But they can also just use it as a backdoor into your network if they do want to stage to a ransom deployment. Anything else on that one? I see someone ask about the Steam malware hosted on profile photos, which is carrying a payload via email phishing. We do have, we were talking about that a little bit this week, so maybe we get the phishing report. I know Pinky didn't prepare anything for that, but if we have time, we could chat about that for a couple of minutes.
Yep, just kind of thinking the same thing on that one. So
yeah,
good call.
Cool. Yeah, so the next one is so there was a piece of malware known as Silo Escape. That is the first known piece of malware that's actually targeting Windows containers within Kubernetes clusters. This was pretty interesting to me. I don't know, Eric, Pink, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You know, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be targeting containers and Kubernetes, right? Like gets something we're seeing. We're going to continue to see. Actually, there's some posts on on Twitter yesterday I saw about a talk that's going to be coming to DEF CON this year that was just announced yesterday about the first escape out of containers on mainframes and stuff, you know, Kubernetes containers and stuff like that. So, I mean, we're going to continue seeing more and more of this. We've been seeing it. We've just been seeing it targeting Linux because Linux is the larger platform than Windows right here in this situation. What's new to this is the fact that it's Windows, right? And it's not surprising.
Same.
So,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thoughts I had too. It's just like I think we're going to see more and more of this, and partially because I think a lot of people rely on it. It is sort of a false sense of security, right? It's in its little bubble. It's doing its thing. It can't get out, and you know that's not always the case. So interesting to see how it continues to develop with those.
Yeah, there were two things I thought were interesting, and I completely agree with you guys. Like this is just the beginning of the wave, right? We're going to continue to see this pattern. Was that it believes this attack campaign's actually been going on for about a year. So it went undiscovered for almost a year. The researcher who actually discovered this was able to infiltrate the command and control, which, you know, Pink was alluding to earlier, which was over IRC as well. And then he was able to, while he infiltrated that IRC channel, discover there were 23 total victims. I thought that was pretty interesting. Mainly it went a year without detection. And I'm surprised.
Actually, I think in the article he was saying that he did identified 23 victims kind of separate from getting on the C2. Am I misunderstanding? I thought there was.
It was so the way it was broken out was there was different IRC channels, and he was having trouble listing those, but he saw I think it was 300 and something users on there, so it may have been more than he could see.
Yeah, I think he did get into it. I think the when he was reverse engineering this specific payload, it was connecting to one of the channels, which was I think Windows Kubernetes or something like that, or it was the name of the channel. So maybe that's where he saw the 23. I can't remember the exact details on that, but nonetheless, at least 23 different victims were identified, at least. And and similarly using IRC, right? And interestingly, just I guess based off of it, you noted in the thing once he connected, seeing the like his user, right, with the victim user connecting to the IRC was prefixed with the type of exploit that was used, whether it be PHP or SQL injection was the noted ones. So obviously this is kind of a similar, at least to the last one we were just talking about, where it's using multiple different types of vulnerabilities to get into things, right, and has different kinds of payloads and different kinds of things to look for to get in and do these types of things. So.
Yeah, the other thing I saw here too is it looked like these were being compiled. You know, he noted it looked like they were being compiled uniquely for each attack as well. So now you're back to right. You can't find these hashes, and I mean I know we say this a lot, but I mean the hash-based detection is just continually going away. It's I won't say it's completely useless, but pretty much everything we see, like the polymorphic, FreakOut, and then this, yeah, I mean it's another hit to hash-based detection there.
Yeah, and specifically it was saying that it was targeting to kind of perform its escape and its compromise outside of the the original cluster or the container. It was targeting the general well-known like one day like already released kind of recent O-Day web application vulnerabilities. So that's why we're probably seeing like the PHP SQL injection type stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I think that continuing back on the unique compilation, heavily obfuscated. This is also a pattern. We talk about the pattern. We want to see these container attacks more and more and more. We've already seen that pattern shift where polymorphic or compiling uniquely for each target is becoming a thing, or just living off the land and files techniques, right? So with all those things together, that gets us to a point where, yeah, the standard hash-based heuristics are kind of going into the way of the past, and we have to look at that more of baselining and anomalies approach, right? Developing those baseline, having heuristic approaches to be able to identify things that aren't normal in our networks. That's something that it's not easy for people to do, but I do think it's incredibly important. That's why we preach baselining your network and your infrastructure, know what's there, what's normal. Then you can identify those deviations without having to rely on those hash-based technologies.
Yeah, to steal a Sands quote, right? No normal, find evil kind of thing, right? So you can't know it's evil if you don't realize that it's abnormal. So.
Yep, exactly. Cool. Anything else on that one, guys?
No, I don't think so. I guess one just last note that apparently after it gets compromised and it is able to escape, it's kind of what it looks like it's doing is just writing for credentials in general to continue spreading, right? I mean, did you guys see, I didn't when I was reading through about stuff, did you guys see like kind of further payloads or end goals that were coming along with this?
I did not. No, the same thing.
Okay. No, but I think we can probably all just, for the most part, assume, right? It's going to be standard.
Right. Sort of, it's going to be a handful of things. Yeah.
But nothing identified that we could go look for, I guess, is the takeaway there, right? It's kind of what you were getting at.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next one is PuzzleMaker. This one was interesting because we've seen this recently before this was published. It's cool when we always come across those things. We see a lot of new things in our incident response and digital forensics side. We've discovered a lot of things that haven't been, documented anywhere yet. This is one of those cases we're working. And I know we've talked about these Chrome O-Days a few times here, right? And so essentially PuzzleMaker is targeting Windows 10 machines that were also vulnerable to Chrome 0 days. They essentially used a combination of vulnerabilities from Chrome and Windows 10 to be able to own a box, right? And we've seen this firsthand. It was a really interesting attack. Yeah, I think that again, like we keep talking about, I think today the theme of the show for me is kind of turning into we're observing new patterns as they start, these new waves as they start. We've talked about this a few times already this year, that just the volume of O-Days that we're already observing compared to last year and the year before seems to be increasing. And now we're going to see more clever exploitation of those O-Days. But I thought this one was really interesting. I don't know if you guys had time to dig into this.
Yeah, this one, sorry, I was going to say, I did find this one interesting just because it was so many exploits, I guess, right? At the end of the day, it's a JavaScript engine O-Day in Chrome that gets you the execution, and then using that to do a information disclosure like a medium, I think it was rated in Windows, CVE 2021-31955, to gain information, then use an NTFS Privesc CVE 2021-31956 to actually get the actual Privesc and into a system for that matter, not just like a USC bypass or something like that. I just in general, whenever I see chains of things like that, and for the stars to align, or for this kind of a thing to be made and be useful and go around and do stuff, is I don't know. It's neat, even though it's not a good thing. You know what I mean? It's just neat.
Yeah. I
think
agree.
we're seeing it a lot this year, though, right? I mean, most of the thing. I mean, the Hafnium thing, right? That was a chain of 3 or 4 vulnerabilities, like you're saying. Kind of the stars had to align for that. Yeah, no, I think it's a lot. I had kind of made a note here. I know we talked about this 1 or 2 sessions back, but it's kind of year of the 0 day. I mean, they've always been around, but we just had such a ramp up this year, and then maybe it's just that we're finding them quicker. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, we talked about this on last month's Hackle Box, where we're currently, as of last month, we were currently at the number for all year last year or something like that, right? Like we're close to it. I don't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I agree, Pink. Like, it is interesting seeing those kind of attack chains where it takes 3 or 4 vulnerabilities to get to that ultimate goal. This is one of the first ones too we've seen that actually was cross-platform, right? So it was not just Windows-related vulnerabilities, right? It had to be a Windows 10 box, and it had to be running a specific version of Chrome, right? Version 8 of Chrome, I believe. And so, but at the end of the day, too, it goes back to what we always talk about when we observe this. It came through a fish. And it's just we're seeing those exploits embedded in those phishing emails be a little more sophisticated now, right? They're not just harvesting creds. We know that. They're not just dropping a payload. Sometimes it's a multi-stage payload. The way this worked, they click that link, and the Chrome 0 day actually gave them access to interact with that system. And then they essentially, if you were on that link, they were live on the other and working to exploit those 2 Windows vulnerabilities to get admin access on the Windows box.
That was actually a problem I kind of had with the article. I just made a note. There was a line in the article that says it's a reminder that 0 days continue to be the most effective method for infecting users. And while I kind of get what they're getting at there, right? I mean, once you're in there, sure, yeah, once you have that, then moving around and that kind of thing, 0 days are great to have. Low-level attackers don't generally have the benefit of 0 days, right? And your higher-level attackers, are they really going to burn them just to get your machine? No. So I just kind of had a problem with that. Like you're saying, it's usually you're still looking at some social engineering attack to at least get that initial start.
Yeah, I have a problem with that statement in general, that O days are the most effective way, or whatever you just said, right? Like that's not true. It's just a false statement in general. Yeah,
I'm sure we could go through any of the statistics and disprove that. So
yeah, well, and it's a dangerous concept, right? I know we've had some conversations in the past where it was, things were, it was kind of like, oh yeah, phishing and social engineering attacks aren't that big of a deal. They're not the way in anymore. And I think that's just absolutely false, and so I worry when we see those types of things in articles. It gives people like, oh, well, 0 days, there's nothing we can do, that kind of thing. Don't fall for that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Don't fall for the, I don't know what you want to call it, but I think a lot of that is kind of a product too of big tech and big security, right? So people pushing agendas that their technology stack, their security stack is the answer to your security. So they want to push those agendas, right? Have this, next gen device that you can put on your edge, so you don't even have to worry about the O days, right? We're going to identify patterns that are different for you. You're not going to have to worry about those things. But we see that as completely false. Like it really comes back to, hackers, attackers are in this to profit by following the path of least resistance, right? And so that's not always going to be O days. In most cases, it's not O days. Of the cases we work, 75-80% of those cases are literally just a simple misconfiguration or a simple phish that they're able to trick the target.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to see a lot more. We're going to see a shift toward more, because as we see increases of O days, right, and people's patching schedules maybe a little bit not up to date, lax for whatever reasons, right, we're going to see a lot of stuff that gets shotgunned out there and hits things, like Hafnium and things like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, weak links exist in a lot of places, and we still have a lot of phishing and a lot of social engineering in general that is causing for a lot of compromise. So,
Yep. Before we move on from this one to a couple things to share with folks for PuzzleMaker, there were a couple good IOCs, which we'll share with you guys. The domain they were using is media-SEO engine.com. So you can always check your network for any communication with that domain. After they were able to get privileged access on the system through Chrome, they essentially used that as a stager. So they would download and execute another malware dropper from a remote server that would install more persistent shell access for them. They were essentially mimicking valid Windows executables or Windows DLLs. We've got a couple of hashes that were observed that we'll share with you guys in the post show notes as well. So if you want to do a quick check, should be easy. All right, so trucking right along here. Not sure if you guys heard, but the FBI, along with the Australian Federal Police, the AFP, essentially shared a project they've been working on for the last 3 years, an operation, I would say, called Operation Ironside, where they created a fake encrypted chat platform, deployed this encrypted chat platform on devices, and then distributed these devices through underground networks to criminal syndicates and criminal affiliates. And they just released this story this week. I think they said they got about 27,000 devices in the wild that led to a whole bunch of stuff on the back end. This one was just cool, man. We don't get to see a lot of these operatives really ever, come public this close to when they were going on, maybe 15, 20 years down the road. I wouldn't be surprised to hear we did this in the past, but to see something this close to the proximity of it actually executing, I thought it was a really, really interesting initiative.
Yeah, and I was reading, it came from a bust of FRSecure back in 2018, which was doing a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they busted them, and then they recruited an anonymous, informant type source inside, and used that person to a distributor of the devices, and use that to create theirs and link up with the distribution network and get theirs out there, and just kind of piggyback into it and say, hey, we're replacing it with better stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was.
You know how long that platform had been around before the takedown happened?
I don't know.
Yep. It seems like they had a pretty good network, though. Just looking, if they got 27,000 devices out working only through an informant network, that's a lot, man.
Yeah, the thing I saw said 12,000, 27 million messages, 12,000 devices. I'm not sure if we're just reading different things, though. But nonetheless, still, it was a very successful thing. It seems like it was targeting, criminal syndicates in general. They said they had like Italian organized crime, motorcycle gangs, drug trafficking, and stuff like that. I mean, did you see the seize numbers? Did you go through those?
Which numbers? I'm sorry.
What all the things
the seizures? Yes, I did. It was crazy.
Yeah, 8 tons of cocaine, 22 tons of cannabis, 2 tons of like amphetamines, or 6 tons of amphetamine like precursors, 250 firearms, 55 luxury vehicles apparently, and 48 million or so worth of different types of currency.
So I kind of had some thoughts on this just as more of a broader topic too, because it's neat to see this. Like you said, when are you ever going to get to see this kind of thing? And they tell you about it, right? But I had a thought, so what if we think about this from like an APT perspective, right? So what if this was just a piece of phone software dumped out there, something like, I don't want to bash on Signal or Wire or anything like that, but let's just say that we had some type of encrypted chat app that was really being ran by an APT on the back end, right? I kind of thought that was an interesting methodology that we may see used, or may already be in use, that we don't know about.
Yeah, it does kind of pose that question of like, do you know really who's running certain things that you're using and stuff like that, so.
Right. Yeah, I think we blindly put a lot of trust into our technologies and our applications, right? And that's, there's no guarantee on anything. And we've seen that, right, historically with a lot of apps that were funneling information out that we were not aware of. And yeah, why do some things like Signal, why does it continue to exist in that platform? And how is it, is it possible they have hooks in that platform now? I think totally. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right on the number of devices. I just messed my notes up. It's 12,000 devices, 300 syndicates in more than 100 countries. That also is interesting. It was, an AFP and FBI thing, but somehow they were able to infiltrate syndicates from 100 countries.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It's a
They
lot.
did. I don't have the list here in my notes,
Yeah.
but they did say that they worked with several other governments in general, I think, but it was just kind of led by those two.
Yeah, and there is, we'll share this link with you guys. We also have there's a YouTube link. I don't know if you guys found this. It's like a quick explainer, like a 3-minute explainer video. It's a cartoon that shows how they, executed the operation, kind of beginning to end. So it's pretty cool. We'll share that with you guys as well. So we got a question here. So any info on that regarding whether or not a warrant was required? So a warrant being required to distribute the devices, maybe I think is what you're asking about. And no, at that point, from my understanding, there's no warrant.
I think the confusion maybe, so I think the deal was it wasn't so much that they were using privately owned device. These were pre-compromised devices, I think is how I understood it. It was almost like burner phones that were being handed out with this pre-installed. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know if that
Yeah, these
changes
were
things.
devices. They were not an app on
exactly
device that they could get other information to. It was just data for this specific device.
Yeah, pre-configured. The devices were only sold through their informant network as well, right? So essentially, Operation Ironside created the device, or obtained the device, installed their software on it, and then distributed that through their underground network of informants and distributors.
And my guess you're probably looking at things like FISA warrants and that type of thing, because you're probably they're probably thinking terrorism, that kind of thing as well. So you have that sort of the secret warrant system that probably was invoked here.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something like that involved. I don't know that we're going to have information at that level, but at the end of the day, I think you've got enough to work off of to get it by saying, hey, they bought this through our underground network for this intent, this intent we believe, and go from that. I know it doesn't take a lot, it seems like, in specific stings. So,
yep. Cool. So moving on, I know we're kind of getting close to the bottom of the hour. Want to hit this one, then we'll bust through a couple quick hits, and then move into the hacker tip of the week and the phishing report. I think that's going to be fun. But I had to call this article out because we talked about it last month when we were digging in on DarkSide and the Colonial pipeline attack. After they shut the doors and they were done, I think we predicted they were just going to pivot and create a new variant and spit up a new entity. So in the last couple of weeks, we've seen that essentially Evil Corp is back on the scene again, which, as we've talked about before, they're on the United States sanction list. I think we've told you guys some interesting stories about that, which means if they encrypt your network and you're in the United States, you cannot negotiate a payment with them. So now they are mimicking the PayloadBin gang in an attempt to evade U.S. sanctions. And we've seen this before, right? Pink, in a case we worked last year where it was Evil Corp, but they were mimicking Wasted Locker, I believe, in that case, same way to try to evade sanctions. And I think this is interesting just due to the timing that with DarkSide and the Colonial pipeline attack, a lot of folks believed that some of the folks behind DarkSide were actually Evil Corp representatives as well. So they burned, and then we see a new imitation, not even a new variant, really. I guess it's somewhat, but it's essentially an old payload that they've modified to mimic another encryption mechanism that already exists.
Yeah, I felt like I needed the thumbtacks and yarn to kind of string all these together as I was reading the article here. And but yeah, you're right. Wasted Locker was a rebranded Evil Corp thing essentially, and it was just another name to avoid those sanctions and kind of get paid. That type of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, we predicted it because it's a very simple kind of path to draw. Right at the end of the day, they have a thing that's they believe is working for them. They get shut down, sure, but that doesn't stop them from spinning up new stuff and trying again. Learn from your mistakes. Try not to affect pipelines and move on. Right? until there's more teeth, to the bite, they're going to be able to continue doing that. And unfortunately, I don't know how we ever get to the point where we can stop that. So.
Yeah.
But no, man, don't sell us short. It was our big giant brains, super geniuses. That's how we predicted that.
Yeah, no, that's right. We very smart people.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think so. I remember Wasted Locker was the Evil Corp actual encryptor, and we saw it mimicking Soda no Kibi was the one, the specific case we worked right. We're on the outside. It looked like it was Soda no Kibi, but you were the first one when we first started investigating this to say, yeah, this looks like Wasted Locker, even though it appears to be Soda no Kibi.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I actually kind of forgotten this. I do remember this one. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, that kind of mimicking is weird. We've seen that a couple times actually with cases.
Yep. Well, cool. We'll buzz right along. 2 quick hits here. So after the Half-Dome stuff, where essentially someone posted an exploit to GitHub, GitHub revoked that exploit, the proof of concept, after it was posted because there were ongoing attacks. There's some people that kind of got stirred up over that. So GitHub has officially updated their policies now to allow the removal of PLC exploits that are being used in active attacks. I think we talked about this, like you guys said, they kind of already did. I think this was just a response to clarify, hey, here's our stance, so you guys clearly understand what our policy is around this.
Yeah, that's what I got from it too. The title of the article and title of some of the way people are kind of addressing some of this stuff is kind of like they're adding policies or whatever. It seems like they're more restating and clarifying. And they went through a process after everybody, the backlash, and kind of said, I think it was some request for recommendation or comment or something they were putting out there saying, hey, what do you guys think we should do, right? And after taking that all into consideration, they kind of came out and said, okay, we've revised our statements to say this. And yeah, even then, I don't know. There's statements along the lines of, anything that's specifically spreading malware for the purpose of malicious use or using GitHub for C2, for instance, or something like that, any of those types of things, they're just going to be removed, right? Plain and simple. Yep. But still allowing to say, hey, if it's a POC exploit or malware that is, they call it dual user purposed, right? Basically, it's for both research and and attack. That's okay. They will allow that. But this particular case that kind of spawned this, right, was a dual user purpose thing. So, it doesn't really clarify anymore, in my opinion, unless I didn't read every single thing they said about everything, but it didn't still fully clarify, I guess, maybe their stance. At the end of the day, I get where they're coming from. They're going to remove certain things. Their history didn't just remove Microsoft stuff. They had removed other things, but obviously it leaves, like I said last month, leaves a bad taste in your mouth anyway when that happens.
Yeah. I know they have a review process and that kind of thing, but how long is it going to be tied up in the review process while it's actively being exploited and people like us are trying to figure it out so we can help folks defend against it? So I have mixed feelings about it, man. I threw a quote in here, information wants to be free, man. So, sure. But I'm
despite any of my feelings on it, though, I'll say that it's good that they took advice. Put it out there, accepted advice, and are making steps to clarify their stance, right? Like, regardless of how you feel about the stance,
sure,
it's good steps. It's a good reaction to the backlash that they, got, and at least there's that.
Agree with that.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Then one more quick hit, and this will go right into the hacker tip of the week. HaveIBeenPwned announced they're going to go open source. Part of that initiative, it sounds like they're going to be working with the FBI, other law enforcement agencies to ingest information from them. I think the plan is to open source HIBP entirely, so we can share data more easily. I like that. That's something we've all talked about before, is our greater power is as a collective mind. So the better we can get at sharing our intelligence with each other quickly, the better we're going to be able to defend. So I'm all for it. I don't know when it's going full open source. I'm not sure if you guys have any more insight on that or not. It just seems like it's in the plan.
Yeah, it's in the plan. The interesting thing to me is that they're opening up endpoints, API endpoints that'll be free and anyone can access to, including the FBI, to upload password hashes, right? It's not just saying, hey, this user was seen, right? It's putting the actual password data out there and getting out to everyone. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to see a lot more password breach data in general from this, I think. You know what I mean? And that's going to be something to be considered. Look, at the end of the day, I don't know how I feel about the FBI. If my data gets breached somewhere, the FBI giving that password hash to someone else that can then later be cracked down the line and used against me, I have some mixed feelings of this. I like sharing of breach data. I think it makes us all more intelligent about what we're seeing. We can do research on it. We can come up with better password structures and recommendations for training users. Yada 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 yada. I still don't like the idea of more people being able to share passwords with people who are going to use them poorly, though. So. I will see how it gets used with HaveIBeenPwned. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to get played out. So
yeah, and I know we don't have a ton of time to dig into that part, or this part I'm thinking of here, but I wonder, and this is maybe I'm off base on this, but knowing that they're going to share password hashes, then you also have that kind of these combinations of known breach passwords and that kind of thing. I wonder if we can speed up cracking at all. You think, with kind of stuffing a little bit, giving a little bit of more of a I don't really want to call it stuffing.
You're talking about like rainbow table type?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of thought.
Yeah, rainbow tables are useful to some extent, but I mean, once you get to a large enough data set, it's so massively, it's a massive slowdown. It's faster to just generate passwords.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that was going to be my question too, which I think kind of leads into RockYou, or the hacker tip of the week here, right? Is like, is there a risk that this ingests too much data, it gets to a point where it almost becomes unusable, right? That sometimes, there is a cap, and you get over that cap and that data becomes just so large, it's hard to actually use.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with that, I mean, I'll say that Oscar keeps saying hacker tip of the week, but we do this monthly, so probably.
Oh yeah, it's the hacker tip of the month. I totally stole this from a fishing podcast I listened to, where they have the guide tip of the week and the fishing report. So it's now the hacker tip of the month officially.
Yeah. There we go. And we're going to start off pretty light on this one. Generally, though, the purpose of this kind of quick hit would be to talk about, like, maybe a tool or something, a method or something like that that's kind of new within the last month that someone's talked about or released or whatever, right? One of the things that kind of made some news in general, and people, maybe not the best kind of news, people kind of over exaggerated it and kind of talked about it incorrectly, is that there was a new compilation of password breach data that was released. It's kind of being called RockYou 2021. If anybody's not familiar with that, RockYou is the name of a list that was released like 12 years ago or something like that now. And it is highly used in password cracking by all types of attackers. And sometimes I've met clients who actually use it to crack their own passwords internally to find out who's got bad passwords and have them change them monthly. So things like that. So it's a very popular list that gets used a lot. It's a collection of about the original one. It's a collection of about 14 million passwords from about 32 million different breaches or user breaches. And it's about 134 megs, and a lot of people use it to kind of just get a quick hit on, hey, these are common passwords. Additionally, with normal password cracking, you can adapt rules to it to mangle that list or to modify things. For instance, changing all the E's to 3s or adding exclamation points to the end or things like that. And so you can get a much larger password set out of mangling it to get a larger password set in general, and you can get a lot more hits. That said, the one that was released earlier this week is being dubbed RockYou 2021. Compared to the 14 million passwords in the original RockYou, this one contains 8.4 billion. It's the largest compilation, at least kind of like publicly, like with a name known about type thing, maybe not sitting on someone's hard drive somewhere. The previous biggest one was a compilation of mini breaches, or COM for short, which contained 3.2 billion. So this is a very large one. It comes out to be about 100 gigabyte text file, which is pretty large. At the end of the day, you're not going to want to pop it on a bunch of different machines, but realistically, it'll have its value. It'll be something that gets used, and something, if you're an attacker out there looking to kind of update some stuff, it'll be something to use in some situations. I probably wouldn't throw a bunch of different mutations on it and try to run it for years, but realistically, I think even though it's a 100 gigabyte file, it's got 8.4 billion passwords in it, it still get through it pretty fast. I mean, I did the calculation on the normal RockYou and all the rules I normally apply to it to mangle it, and we're sitting at somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 billion, and it still only takes like half an hour to get through on a 42080 machine or something. So it's going to be usable. It's going to be something that's out there. Check it out. Probably won't mangle it too much, and yeah, I'll try to have something better next month.
Awesome, man. Thanks for the hacker tip of the month, not the week. Fishing report, Pink. What you got? What's button?
Hey, yep. So yeah, so same kind of deal, right? So for those of you guys who didn't see, we started this last month. Fishing report, kind of talk about what's going on out there, what kind of things are working. If you fish a lot, you'll know different seasons, different baits, that kind of thing. So kind of want to talk about that a little bit. And so in today's segment, I titled Cheater Bait. So for any of you all that do fish and things like that, so if you're trout fishing, you'll see a guy out there with a a can of corn or something like that, trying to cheat a little bit. So kind of wanted to call this one Cheater Bait, in particular because we're going to talk about a couple of really targeted fishing campaigns, but I wouldn't call them spear fishing or anything like that. It's not that kind of targeting. It's targeted more with subject matter. So the first one was around brokerage firms. And so for any of our financial customers out there, probably want to keep an eye out for this type of thing. But it was essentially an email that was mimicking being from FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And it was notifying brokerage firms. FINRA themselves actually notified brokerage firms of an ongoing phishing campaign. But the way this looks, it looks like it's a FINRA case that's been opened. And it says, here's your case number, here's your request ID, your request date, name of the FINRA requester. It looks really legit. It comes from a domain that was actually FINRA or gateway-FINRA. If you go.org, if you go to that, please don't. But if you were to go to that URL, it actually just redirects you to the real FINRA page. So for IT folks and things like that are kind of checking out these phishing emails as they come in, this might have fooled a lot of people. And so one of the things that was really sort of troublesome about this one too is they also try to apply some pressure to you and say, hey, if you don't get back to us quickly with this information we're requesting, then you could face fines, you could face penalties, that kind of thing. So it really gets people to perk up and the kind of government regulators come after you, you tend to pay attention. So this one in particular was requesting information about your brokerage, some things like that. So it was very, very targeted, very scary if you see that pop up, and it's going to catch a lot of people. So be aware of that. But then there was another one that kind of wanted to jump into, same type of situation here. And to the person who, I don't want to lose this, but the person who asked about the Steam malware being hosted on profile photos and being carried by payload, by email phishing, it's the same type of thing, right? You're getting really targeted with someone who expects Steam emails and that kind of thing. So this is all very, very similar, but I wouldn't say that well-done phishing campaigns are exactly new, but it does seem like we're seeing a higher level of sophistication here lately. We're seeing this be more prevalent. And one of the big ones that came out that's really sort of what sparked a lot of this was some folks are using the Colonial pipeline attack as a subject matter for this, right? So essentially, it's an email that comes out. It looks like it's from your IT team or somebody managing your updates, or even just an update service. I know some of them had a domain that looked like ms-sysupdate. So looks like it's come from Microsoft, that kind of thing. But this one was very worded really well to, hey, you just saw the Colonial pipeline attack. You don't want that to happen here. Please go download these system updates and IT will follow up later. Well, those system updates, if you click the link to go out to them, took you to a page that was crafted to look like your organization had put it out there. So they'll use, your logo, that kind of thing. But you download that update and it had our good friend Cobalt Strike in it. So those that aren't familiar, Cobalt Strike, it's a legitimate pen testing tool, nice tool, but it's been picked up and used by a lot of malicious groups as well. We see it in a huge portion of cases that we work. Very difficult to detect that type of thing, so that's why it's out there. But one good piece on this one was that at least they're using a known hash for that beacon, or that piece of Cobalt Strike, at least so far, and they were being picked up by a lot of antivirus. So some protection there, but I wouldn't rely on that. There's a decent chance that that'll just change. They'll be using a different one. Those beacons get generally crafted per organization you're targeting, so you end up with a different hash every time, that type of thing. And also of note too, when I was looking at the list, at least as of the article writing time, Microsoft Defender, McAfee, Symantec, most of your well-known ones were not picking it up. The only two that I even recognized on the list that were really popular were FireEye and Kaspersky. Not an advertisement for either of those, but just saying not a lot of people were picking it up either. So be really careful with that, but really just, it goes back to being extra careful with any phishing emails you get in. Did want to note, somebody brought it up last week as well. Make sure if you have the ability of Office 365, Mimecast, Proofpoint, something like that, to drop in that Outlook report phishing email button. Make sure you're turning that on, encourage your users to use it, and make sure you're checking out the reports, because you can get alerted to this stuff really quickly. So
Cool.
no, it was a little rush there, but let you jump back in, guys. What do you guys
I think it's a solid phishing report. The one thing I think, is interesting, we always look at like social engineering, is there's an influence technique, right? And both of those, relying on relevant events, but also like trying to essentially implement or establish like a fake time constraint. So you feel a sense of urgency in doing those actions. If we make quick decisions, we're more likely to make mistakes when we make those decisions. So as always, like we talk about, if you're unsure of anything, validate you should have got that request from who it's expected to be coming from. Validate those links. Don't click it. Report it. Do the thing. Put in those features like Binky just talked about, so you can easily report it. But if you're unsure, just ask for a second set of eyes. Ask for someone that you trust, and try to validate with the center they actually sent you that. Cool. I don't think I have anything else. I think that'll bring us to the end, unless you guys got anything to add.
Nope.
We appreciate all you guys joining us. Hopefully this is beneficial and informational for you. We'll send out show notes as always too. We do want these to be interactive. So if you guys have questions, kick them to us beforehand. We encourage you to ask questions during the show. Any topics you would like to see us cover, shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to respond to those in the next session. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the summertime, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.